Hey everybody. So today I'm going to discuss why I think antinatalists should embrace elective promortalism. And I'm being very specific when I say elective because a lot of antinatalists are trying to run away from the term promortalism because they don't want to be associated with a death cult. So I'm going to start out by talking about what antinatalism is and what it seeks to accomplish. Antinatalism is a philosophical position that procreation is unethical, it violates consent, and imposes existence on someone without their agreement. I can talk about the asymmetry. I guess you guys already know that. But the bottom line is that procreation imposes suffering, harm, disease, aging, and ultimately death, right? It treats people as a means to an end. There's no non-selfish reason to procreate. All reasons to procreate benefit those who currently exist. There is not a single reason that benefits the person who is brought into existence. I understand that there are people who say that they value their lives after life has already been imposed on them, but I'm talking about the original imposition. When you did not exist, you were not created for your benefit. You were created for the benefit of your parents and society. Now, the goal of antinatalism is to prevent suffering and death. It's supposed to be harm reduction, right? So our goal is to stop the cycle of suffering and death. But traditional antinatalism is limited because it's really an ethical position that has no import when it comes to practical application. Like basically, we're just preaching to the choir. Like we already understand it, and so I don't think anybody who's outside the anti-natalist community is really listening to us. Like, um, I think they don't care. Even people who say that they're ethical, even other ethical groups don't give a shit about anti-natalism. They think it has nothing to do with them. Again, they see this as a death cult, so they don't want to be associated with anti. Even I guess I'll be specific. Even the vegans don't care about anti-natalism, and I think it's because we're the pessimists, right? The motivation is pessimistic, whereas they're optimistic. They think that they can actually make the world a better place, and that's fine. This is the reason why elective promortalism needs to be brought into the conversation. Let's see if there's anybody here. Um, if you believe that procreation is unethical and that your goal is to eliminate suffering, um, you don't want people to be forced to exist against their will, then the logical conclusion is that you would necessarily need to support elective promortalism. Now, again, I think that people are being cowards because they don't want the label, but the goal is the same. If there was no consent in the original imposition, then there also is no consent in the continuation of the person who was brought into existence. So I'm not sure why you would arbitrarily draw the line and say it is unethical to procreate, but once you're here, there's nothing we can do about it. We're just going to wash our hands, right? We're not going to push for any public policy. We're just going to leave it to individual discretion whether they agree with us or not. What about those who are here, right? You can talk about not imposing life onto those who don't exist, but once we're already here, I mean, what is your solution for us, right? Because we're advocating for an ethical position, which doesn't necessarily benefit us, right? It's we're trying to save those who don't exist. But what about us? And by elective promortalism, I'm talking about the legal right to a medically assisted death, the same right which is growing traction around the world, which is legal in Canada, but with stipulations. I think it should be an unfeathered right There should not be any restrictions. There should not be any waiting period. If you have decided as a competent adult that you don't want to exist, you should have the legal right to medical assistance without any interference from the state. Now, I'm going to go even further to say that the anti-natalists who don't support elective promortalism are absolute hypocrites. They're emotionally detached. They just want to write papers and write books and have these academic discussions. They're not willing to go far enough. It's so cold and detached. Um, and there was some guy, I guess, Bad Ethics, which he made a series. He made a series of videos. They were called "Antinatalism is against procreation." Then he like slashed it out and put promortalism. Like he lined a lot of several of us up, like die anti-natalist and several of us. And I was actually interested to see that I was in his lineup of bad ethics, because in one of my old videos on the Anti-Natalist Informant channel, I did advocate for promortalism. And whoever this person is, because there's no audio, it's just basically clipping a bunch of other people's content and saying that we're all espousing bad ethics. Um, I'm not advocating for a blanket extinction of all sentient life. I mean, I'm going to be honest and say that that would be a more consistent position than just trying to make everyone go vegan, and then you're not addressing the wildlife, and then you're not addressing the fact that people still have a desire to consume what is in their nature. That's fine, but you don't want to go that far. You don't want to advocate for total extinction of sentient beings. I would say the extinctionist approach is far more consistent than just trying to tell people to go against their nature in perpetuity. That is not a long-term solution. Fine. You don't want to be a blanket extinctionist, and that's fine. But what about those who actually do want that right? Why are we not advocating for that? Why are we just talking about the ethics of the original imposition? And I think it is because a lot of them are paternalistic. They are hardcore statists. They believe in democracy, and because the will of the people has not decided, they have not agreed. They have not come around to seeing that forcing someone to exist against their will is completely unethical, is undemocratic, is it's the worst form of slavery. It's modern day slavery. It's appropriating someone's life for a public purpose, all while forcing that person to maintain their involuntary existence. Now, the respectability politics has to go. And the reason why it has to go is because it's not getting us anywhere. So you think that by playing it safe, oh, they're going to take anti-natalists more seriously. They're not. They don't. That's why they're not taking it seriously, because we're not making any demands. Stop being so respectable. Stop the academic approach. It's not getting us to anywhere. Anti-natalism has run into a brick wall. People already understand the arguments. They don't give a shit. So what are we going to actually do for those people who currently exist? Look at the pro-lifers. Do you think they care about being extreme? Do you think they're by the way, the pro-lifers or anti-choices, as I would call them, that's the real death cult. They're the ones who are imposing life onto people, knowing full well that life comes with a death sentence, right? They are the ones who are that is the root cause of all suffering and death. They don't care. They don't care about respectability politics. And there's actually another group um, that that's even more extreme than being pro-life. They're calling themselves, ironically, they're calling themselves abolitionists. Can you believe that shit? You're the fucking no. abolitionist. I'm fighting for liberation for those who don't want to exist. You're the one who's trying to enslave people against their will, and then you're going to call that saving the unborn. No, I'm born. I'm here. You don't get to impose your paternalistic role, paternalistic role on me, and then say that you are acting in my self-interest. Like, no, I can speak for myself. I am a competent adult. I want the legal right. You don't get to have your self-serving agenda so that you can extract from my existence and from other people's existence and then call yourself noble. Now, I really have to emphasize that this is about elective promortalism. This isn't about forcing people, because I don't know how many times I can say this, because again, they are running away from this term. We can't force everybody to stop procreating, but we can help those who currently exist. Now, I don't really want to get too graphic because I do need to create a channel on Rumble. And this is why the discussion is not fair anyway, because they can posit their position openly without any restraint, because the pro-life position is the dominant position. There's no pushback, right? They can say it freely, but we have to monitor our language. We have to police ourselves. And so it's not even a fair debate, because they can say whatever they want, and then we kind of have to talk around it, and then it looks like they're winning the discussion, but we haven't even put forth our position. And so while we're making all these euphemisms and talking we can't even talk about the specifics of how traumatic it is for you to have a self-administered approach. Like, for you to ask, like, I mean, you would think that if they had any type of empathy, they would already know what you're talking about, but they don't. You actually have to spell it out. Why they say that it's so easy for you to just do it yourself, and who cares about what you think about whether you think that it's so easy, but you're not the one who actually has to do it. We want the legal right. We don't give a shit about how you think that it's easy. You're The problem is that we don't need lectures, right? You think that all we need is that to talk to someone, and that for those of us who have contemplated this issue for, you know, several years, you think that you're just going to come in 5 minutes and you're going to come up with a solution that none of us have ever considered. So we don't need legal rights. We just needed you to talk to us, and then you're going to mansplain how we should feel about our own existence. You see the arrogance behind it? This is what they always do. Now, the reason why I do advocate for promortalism, and I should have put the word elective in my book, but I whatever, you can't think of everything. I tried to fine tune it and get it as right as possible. But the term elective needs to be stated anytime we say the word promortalism. This helps those who are currently enslaved, those who are forced to exist against their will. Not only that, it actually curtails procreation, because we can't stop people from procreating, but what we can do is deprive them of the unjust enrichment that they thought they were going to get a lifetime of benefits. They were going to get purpose, emotional satisfaction, legacy, care in their old age, because you were trapped. You didn't have a right to opt out. But this cuts off their guaranteed return on investment. So if parents think, I call them life slavers and slavers in my book, if they think that if they create a human being, they're going to get a lifetime of benefits, because I want you to understand that everybody's motivated by their own selfish desires. Everybody is. And so for somebody to say that I'm being selfish for whatever, for I guess because I'm being anthropocentric. I'm only focusing on humans, not animals. I want you to understand that everybody's being selfish. So you owe it to yourself to be selfish. It doesn't. They're going to try to guilt trip you out of being selfish, to say that you shouldn't focus on your own liberation. You should focus on everything else but your own liberation. You should focus on animals. You should focus on helping society. Absolutely not. Your liberation comes first. You should be as selfish as you want to be when it comes to this fundamental issue. Now they procreate because they thought they were going to get a return on their investment. If they are not able to reap the return on their investment, people are going to stop procreating. And this is already happening. We have women all over TikTok talking about how they're lamenting the fact that they have these children with special needs. They didn't think that they would be relegated to raising a child with special needs for the rest of their life. They thought they were going to have children who were actually going to enrich your life. So guess what? You gambled incorrectly. You didn't calculate the risk, and now you're paying for a decision that you voluntarily made. If I guarantee, if all parents thought that they would be stuck raising a special needs child, they would all stop procreating. They don't want to be burdened with that. They don't want to have children who are not going to give them a return on their investment, to give them the continued extraction. So whether it's special needs, whether there's an untimely ending of an involuntary existence, either way, the unjust enrichment is cut short. Now, I'm not advocating for a legal right. I'm an anarchist, by the way. So I'm advocating for the decriminalization of a right which already exists under natural law. The state is interfering with a natural right. The state does not have legitimate authority to interfere with the disposal of one's person. If you own your life, you have every right to do whatever you want, but you don't actually own your life because the master state owns it. We're demanding rights. We're not asking for permission. Now, let me see if there are any other comments. Okay. Okay. Well, I just think people don't care. I think people don't care. And on top of it, I don't think it is actually productive to try to shame people who already have children. Um, I think you can explain it to them, but at the same time, we need to focus on what, like the actual redress for the imposition, and which is what my book is all about. This is what life abolitionism is about. That once they understand the full consequences of that imposition, that they do have duties to redress that imposition. They should be leaving their children an inheritance. They should be doing everything they can as parents to make their children's lives as comfortable as possible. But beyond that, society also owes a debt, which is to either allow them to opt out or provide the full maintenance for their involuntary existence. If you believe that life has so much value, because that value is not for the individual, that value is for society. So if you think that my life, my involuntary existence is in the best interest of society, then you should pay for my involuntary existence. You should give full maintenance in the form of socialism, full health care, for housing, for food security, full education, all of it. So the primary focus should not be on guilt tripping people. Either they get it or they don't. A lot of people are just never going to agree. They're not going to agree no matter how you present it. So the focus should be on rights, and the only right that is relevant to antinatalism is the right to redress the original imposition. Now, I was just on D&W's channel, like, what was that, 2 days ago? They were gaslighting me, trying to say that because I have the ability to do it in a traumatic, violent way, that means that I have a right. No, a right is a legal entitlement that the state has to honor. Now, I explain this at length in my book, that the state does not create rights. Rights exist under natural law. The state only enumerates rights which already exist. So the purpose of forming a social contract is to have a state that will protect your natural rights, not to abrogate your natural rights and tell you what you can and can't do, No, these are rights that are pre-political. These are rights that exist independent of any state. And they're going to tell you that you have the right to do this act, despite all the barriers, all the societal barriers, the fact that you were indoctrinated to believe that you're going to go to hell, the psychiatric pathologizing, the criminal laws for those who would assist. But no, they say that you should just do this yourself with no medical assistance whatsoever. Now, they would never make the same argument for when it comes to imposing life on someone. They would never say that a pregnant woman should just go out into the jungle and have labor herself without any medical assistance. She should just cut the umbilical cord herself by beating her cord with a rock. And she should just push. She should just push and let the baby fall out magically, um, and risk her life. Again, I can't talk about all of the negative consequences of self-administered approaches, but we all know what they are, and they usually fail. This is the reason why the right to medical assistance is so crucial. Nobody wants to be stuck with debilitating injuries for the rest of their life, making their situation even worse. But the reason that they do this is because they're trying to shift the blame. They're trying to say that you secretly actually want to be here. You don't know what you actually want, but the fact that you have not taken that final act means that you actually want to be here. So they don't have to take any accountability for their imposition. They're going to blame shift and say that this is all your fault. And again, we don't need lectures. We don't need you to mansplain what you think we should do. We need rights. That's what we need. We need the state to stop interfering with our natural rights. If our lives have inherent value, then show me the money. Put your money where your mouth is. You keep talking about how the state has an interest. Where have you demonstrated that the state has any interest? You can claim that the state has interest all you want, but is the state matching their words with action? What interest has the state actually taken in our lives? Is the state paying our bills? Is the state doing anything to protect us? No, the state is running amok and shooting people in the faces who are peacefully protesting. Now, we already know that cats have the ability to obtain medical assistance. Dogs have the ability to obtain medical assistance. Capital murderers have the right to medical assistance. Why is it that everybody has the right to medical assistance except law-abiding citizens? Why is that? Are we being punished for being law-abiding citizens? I mean, what kind of perverse incentive are they pushing on society? That in order to have a right to a humane exit, you have to be a capital murderer. What kind of logic is that? So, as I stated in my book, the only because apparently they believe that the only way that anybody has any morals is because of the threat of state violence. That without the state, none of us would act decently, none of us would respect other people's rights. What actually constrains the man who does not fear death? The only thing that would constrain the man who doesn't fear death are his own ethics. His refusal to harm others in order to obtain the right which the state threatens. All right, now let's see if there's anybody still here. Okay, well, there's some people here, but I don't see any comments. But yeah, I think that is a natural. That is the It is sadistic. It is absolutely sadistic, and they know it's sadistic, which is why they're gaslighting everybody because they want to say that you chose to be here, that because you continue to exist, this is all your fault. I already addressed this in chapter 2 of my book, which I have already reviewed on here. Um, they don't care. Well, it's sadistic specifically the fact that they say that you should do it yourself. The fact that they're so callous about it. They make it sound like you're just making a cup of coffee. Really, is that easy? You know how many people fail? You know how painful, not just physically, but emotionally, how traumatizing it is for you to have to think that you have to go do this along with. I've already reviewed the criminal statutes, right? The criminal statutes is you can't provide any assistance. That means no emotional support, no financial support, no medical support. So you can't even talk to anybody. Everybody's going to gaslight you and talk about how things are going to get better. You're not alone, right? There's people who care. Oh gosh, I can't say everything I want to say on YouTube, but you can say that you care all you want, but back it up with action. Are you going to pay my student loans? Right? And of course, that person said, "Oh, well, you chose those student loans. I didn't choose my student loans." You can't get an occupational license without getting the damn student loans. And without the occupational license, the state will throw you into a damn cage if you try to earn a livelihood without state permission. The state created all of these conditions, and then at the tail end of that, they're going to say all of this is your fault, even though you had no control over any of this stuff. This is their way of absolving themselves of any responsibility. We live in a democratic state. Everything that happens is with the consent of the majority. It's with the consent of public. They support this slave system, but they want to try to do a uno reversal and say that this is your fault. Right. And not only that, they use these health and safety codes as backdoor criminalization. They're going to institutionalize. They're not going to call it an imprisonment. They're going to call it an apprehension. They're going to throw you in a cage without any due process. You get due process after they already put you under psychiatric confinement. After they have already confined you, then you can get a due process hearing. But because it's not a criminal charge, it is a civil charge. You don't have the right to an appointed attorney. So you have to hire an attorney at your own expense. And all these people are going around reporting people for their thoughts, for expressing their thoughts. And then you're the one who has to suffer the consequences for it. It's absolutely disgusting. It's absolutely sadistic. And they're being dishonest about it. They're trying to act like they're helping you. They're not trying to help you. We need more than your damn words. Are there any tangible benefits that you can actually offer? Are you going to help somebody get a decent job, give them housing, to make them have a decent quality of life? No, you think the only thing you can do is talk to someone, and you think talking to someone is good enough. I don't need your conversation. What I need are rights. What I need you to do is to get your foot off my neck and get the state off my neck so I can do whatever I need to do for my own preservation or whatever the opposite of that happens to be. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end this live stream. That's my rant for today. I do have more rants, and I'm going to be reviewing chapter 5 of my book very soon. So y'all have a good night. Thank you for stopping by.